and has assured us that the interests of our region will be safe with him, because he's got a commitment that is shared with the President in securing the gains for our region, in security of our people, in business people, and ensuring that our prosperity can be enhanced as we build the GDP to double-digit numbers. So
it's a beginning of a new journey, and we are very happy that we have started with this kind of conversation. We also have liked the approach of Baba coming to talk to us, humbling himself, because we are tired of people chest thumping and looking for our support by force. So from today we have started a new journey, and we're going to work together.
I thank my host this morning for what they have done this morning, and I've told them that I'm looking for partners, not followers, in the mountain. And I'm sure because that partnership, we know, produced independence, for the independence of this country. And that partnership will liberate this country to prosperity. I think.
Si kuona mama boga, si kuona mtu ya bodaboda, si kuona mkulima wa kahawa katika hiyo mkutano.
And we want unity that is about the real people, the common mwananchi, not just the leaders and a few billionaires.
Mount Kenya has always been united because it wants to keep the promise of 10 years for President Uhuru and 10 years for William Ruto.
Pia huyu mtu ya kitendawili atuhakikishia ya kwamba hata lete fujo ndio afanye handshake na huyu William Ruto. Akituhakikishia hiyo ni sawa sawa. Ingine tukutane kwa debe. Kwa sababu hii debe ndio yenye kuamua. Hako wao bilionea 20 na iko sisi sote mamilioni. Tukutane pale.
Wow, so Linus, and we'll come to those responses just now, but this looks like a very interesting script, one would say. I mean, just like we were discussing before the break, all these things are not just happening from nowhere. There is a method to the madness, as they say. and you can see the Tanga MPs, as we've called them over the months, are not taking this lightly. They are actually pushing back because they see there's a script.
Yes, and you can see the contestation between the two sides, Tanga and the handshake side. Both sides seem to know very, very clearly that this election will be decided by Central Kenya. How the votes go in Central Kenya will be deciding this election. And here is what Raila is looking for. He's looking for not what is had, but what is never had. And you can see how he's jumped into the opportunity. And he appears to be having a good time in the sense that this is going better than probably he thought it would. And then faster than probably he had projected this to go. Because when sitting members of parliament of the region and when the president verbalizes a near endorsement in Kibra, it can be better than that. And it can be better than having the body that is known to have made decisions consequentially for the region in the last 2-3 elections. That's the Mount Kenya Foundation. Having lunch with you and all those things being said, I think Raila Odinga has had a very, very good week politically. There's something we said here, and Francis, you'll remember some time back we discussed about the nature of hierarchical decision-making process in Central Kenya. I spoke of a pyramid, and the pyramid is going to come to play here. We said that the pyramid, at the top of the pyramid, the very narrow end, sits the elite of the community, the wealthy, the influential in terms of whether it's governmental or corporate sector. They sit up there, and normally decisions pass down the chains. And it's been done that way since 1920s when the Kikuyu Central Association was formed. So that's why you can't ignore a lunch that takes place at Safari Park Hotel. because it's a very, very consequential lunch. Are we going to see these conversations going forward? I think that's what we can predict, barring something dramatic happening on the side of the Raila Odinga camp, because it looks like the endorsement process has begun. It has begun in small ways. It started with elders, and then it moves to the lunch. Now we have members of parliament. And the next thing, you will have Raila Odinga doing rallies in central Kenya, formally making the entry an endorsed one, not the one that was he was trying the other day when he went to Ndakaini, that event. Basically, this looks like the launch pad being prepared for central Kenya, and making him to actually easily campaign in central Kenya than he's ever done.
But it's an interesting thing, which I think, and I think someone here talked about it, there's an experiment that is underway, which I think a lot of people will be watching, because if you look at the responses of the Tanga MPs, they seem to be counting on something. And even today I listened to Kimani Ichung'wah talking about young people. They need to rally the young people to register and vote eventually. And the idea here is that there is an argument that I have heard in this town, that there is an increasingly large number of young people who have only just come of age in the last couple of years, who might not easily relate with all these stories of independence and constitution fight, the so-called second liberation and that sort of thing, and that they are coming from a totally different premise. And not come the election, their decisions might be based on other things apart from the sort of historical fault lines and fact determined election that we've seen in the past. So I wonder, Francis, what your thinking is about that, what you hear about that the young men and women who have turned 18 since, say, 2017, that their issues are here and now, that they sort of, and I know Linus has very strong views about that, but that their issues are here and now, and that they don't necessarily care that Raila Odinga was detained for 9 years, or that he's associated with the struggle for a new constitution and all of those historical things that matter to a certain generation of Kenyans, but are totally alien to this new crop of potential voters in 2022.
Most definitely. Some of the voters that you're talking about were born in the year 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003. So they probably would not have that historical advantage or perspective. So they're into here and now, you know. Those are people who probably rarely even watch news. They are more mobile than anything else. Those are people who understand things on the go. So you must understand what they need, where they're coming from. And so it's a question of messaging. And you'll see a lot of... This election will be very technology heavy and also very data heavy. You will see a lot of that. Because if you're talking about registering voters, the month of October that we're getting into from 4th, yeah, you're talking about a group of people who in 2017 were not eligible as voters. Actually, the KCSE class of 2017 is now eligible to vote this year. Those are about 1 million people. Another 1 million in 2018, another 1 million in 2019, 2020. That's about 4 million. And also, you need to mop up a few of those who also didn't vote or didn't register to vote in the 2017 general election. So you're talking about not less than 5 million new voters. This is a sizable number of voters. If IEBC is targeting a voter register with about 25 million voters in next year's general election, let's say if for argument's sake, say 20 million people turn up to vote, the winning presidential candidate must get not less than 10 million votes.
Plus one.
Plus one, of course. So these 5 million new registered voters, if they were to be listed in the roll of voters, are a significant number of people who can make it possible for you to win an election or not to win an election. So you will see all camps, all presidential teams that will be in the race, and seriously in this race. And by seriously, I mean people who can sit and say, based on my calculation, I can get about 10 million votes. These people will have what I think is a mixed kind of messaging, where you're targeting the young people, you're also targeting the older voters, because they will still be on that roll of voters. So you may concentrate so much on the young people and forget the slightly older ones who may vote against you. So you're looking for votes both ways, the young and the old.
And then there's the question also of dependability, of who is that person who will vote. If they say they're going to vote, they will vote. And if they say they're going to vote for you, they will vote for you, come rain, come shine. And there's that argument also about just the nature, the peculiarities of each of these demographics insofar as things like civic duty, whether that demographic actually sees voting as a civic duty, something that they need to wake up and go and do. And those are interesting questions. Second question, I think, is do these people live in an island where they actually make their own decisions, or is there a sense in which their decisions are also in some ways influenced by people who have been there, done that, people who are slightly older? Are they making any reference to them, or they are like a whole lot unto themselves and they don't quite care what their uncles, their elder brothers and sisters and so on are saying about this strange thing called election?
And most importantly, do they tie their vote, as a consequence to the service delivery and a change in their lives? Are some of the questions we'll be asking ourselves, and the messaging will definitely seek to target, because those are 6 million, possible voters if, IBC succeeds in targeting the numbers that it does. So how do you manage that messaging? And like you were saying, the older generation, more dependable, those are the people who will, wake up at 3 in the morning and, stand in the queue for that period of time. These are the things we're going to start to see. And I know we're going to move into the discussion of what just happened today. And you could even see, the sort of messaging that was there, with KANU and their new presidential aspirant, shall we say, because it's not been declared a candidate yet, saying form me different. And we're going to start to see some of these slogans. But how you move it from a slogan to something that is actually meaningful to these bunch of new voters, millions of new voters, that says we're speaking to you directly. You noticed even with Raila Odinga, in these meetings that we're saying seem to have been, very well arranged according to a script. You remember in the beginning, he started with speaking to youth, and he started speaking to artists, and started talking about, the money that is due to those in the creative sector. Those are some of the things we're going to be seeing. What you're seeing with Deputy President William Ruto saying, we're all about the young people, the hustlers, the ones who are, out there making a living. What we've seen, Irungu Kangata saying, I didn't see the Mama Mboga, I didn't see the young people there. That was a bunch of older people. But not to forget that at the end of the day, I think we've already said this on the show, that money does drive an election. And what happens when you have all of these young people who are looking for work, have no money, that money that is possibly being raised at a function like the Mount Kenya Foundation, should they choose to have another lunch or dinner in the next coming months, what do you think that money is going to be used for? It'll definitely go to these young people who, by the way, have been hard hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, and not to mention the fact that the economy even before then was not doing well. There's the issues of unemployment that are there. And so some of this money will definitely go to using the youth to try and steer them in one way, to use them in campaigns, hopefully not for violence or any other things that, are unpleasant. So
And reaching the youth, I don't know if social media will be a factor in this election.
Oh, it will be.
Yesterday I was looking at Twitter Spaces, and the South African president was conducting campaigns on Twitter Spaces, and people were asking him directly questions, and he was speaking to them. And it made me think about us here in Kenya, if those will be some of what we'll be seeing as new ways of trying to reach these voters, who Gashuri so eloquently explained to us and told us about the number of young people who are eligible to vote, who will be very vital if they do come out and support a candidate, and you're able to get this 5 million votes that are out there. But I think now we need to, go to the next point.
Just one small thing, the question of dependability. You see, dependability depends on interests. So why are these young people coming out to vote for candidate A and not candidate B, or for candidate C and not candidate D? that dependability is also based on what are their interests. What do they see in a certain candidate?
Enough to wake up.
Enough to wake up and vote. And number two, the youth vote is also not homogeneous. You can't say, this is the way the young people will vote, or this is the way the old people will vote. Same way you can't say, this is the way farmers will vote. This is the way, business people will vote. Because you will have farmers who will vote for Raila Odinga. You will have pastoralists who will vote for William Ruto. You will have business people who will vote for, let's say, Kalonzo Musyoka. You will have artists who will vote for Musalia Mudavadi, and all those other presidential candidates. So it is the amount of votes in a certain cluster that you can get. And you must give them a reason to vote for you. That dependability is based on what they see, their aspirations, their hope in that particular candidate.
And if it's put plainly, the experiment we are talking about here is an attempt to rewrite the way politics happens in this country, an attempt to basically dislodge the tribe as the key factor of political mobilization in this country, the basic unit of political mobilization, and displace it and bring other issues that we've always talked about, but they never quite make it to the ballot. And I think that's something that will be very interesting to watch how it plays out.
Yes, Joe, and it is an experiment that is only taking place on this desk. Because yes, because it's not happening out there. We need to put this to context, because how have we seen people organizing, whether it's the deputy president, whether it's Raila Odinga, whether it's Musalia Mudavadi, how have they been organizing? They have not been organizing along the demographics of youth, women, and those things. When you see all these delegations that, for example, Troop to Karen, they come from regions. You are speaking to, this time it's Narok, and I think today it was Machakos.
Machakos, yes.
And
it was Tharaka Nithi the other
yes,
day.
and when you go to Mount Kenya Foundation lunch and breakfast with Mount Kenya MPs, it's not a certain demographic that you're organizing. We organize along our tribes and along our regions, and that is how the next election will be decided.
Let's look at something that is also different. Today they had this thing they're calling Formni Different, Kanu Fresh.
Hashtag.
And that is what was happening at the Bomas of Kenya. A very interesting event that a delegates meeting, which was basically to endorse Gideon Moi, or at least to give him the mandate from the party to go and fight for the presidency. But it was quite surprising to see all these other faces there, Raila Odinga for one, Kalonzo Musyoka, Musalia Mudavadi, and all of that. A very confusing event at that level, but Gideon Moi basically saying that KANU is back, and that he talked about halftime or something. Can we play the sound?
A 20-year halftime.
Yeah, we can play the sound bite on that halftime, and then we can come back and talk about it.
And today, I want to declare that our half-time is over and we are back.
KANU is back! KANU imerudi ama bado?
Tutembee bega kwa bega kama Wakenya na tuweke Wakenya mbele, ili Kenya iwe kwanza na sisi tufate.
Hata kama wengine watakuacha, you know I can't. Na kama wengine watatuacha, na kama wengine wataniacha mimi, najua Gideon hawezi kuniacha.
GM, you have been nominated. The team behind you here, plus also the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga, will be the team that will form the next government.
So just what is going on here? You know, KANU is coming back, it's KANU Fresh. This is a moment for them to, you know, sort of stand out and tell us why KANU is different from Wiper, is different from ODM. Is this a democracy? Is this one where we're saying we're giving the people the options of choices that are starkly different from each other, that an ODM presidency will be significantly different and better for you than a UDA one, and a UDA one will be significantly different and better than a Jubilee one, than you know, a Wiper one? What is this? Why do you have all of these candidates here? And just the other day, we saw hardliners telling the Wiper party leader, usiachilie, do not let anybody else do it. And he's here saying, you know, I am with you, I am supporting you. In what way? Why do we have political parties? Why do we have all of these differences? And just goes to show what is it that is so ideologically different from all of these parties and all of these candidates. Why would they be here endorsing another before they have even themselves gotten the endorsement of their own political parties? Honestly, it's not difficult to see where this is headed. And remember, just this morning, Raila Odinga was busy getting endorsement from the Mount Kenya MPs. You know, this for me is just, it's not confusing, but it really does speak to our politics and how there is not much difference here. I would have liked to see a little bit more of a very distinct differentiation for KANU. I mean, like they said, it's 20 years since they fielded a candidate. I want to see what is new, what is fresh. And just having all of these people here on this stage, and they were playing the One Love song by Bob Marley. Honestly, this it's a bit of a farce for me.
It would be a farce if you were trying to look at it in a very ideal kind of a situation. Right. This is politics, and so there isn't any surprise. In fact, when Musalia Mudavadi launches his presidential bid and is endorsed by ANC, present will be Kalonzo, Raila, Gideon. When Wiper leader launches his bid, you will see Musalia, you will see Raila, you will see Gideon. And when Raila Odinga is launching his bid, you will also see Kalonzo, you will see Musalia, and you will see Gideon. So the difference is the same, Yvonne.
The difference is the same. I like that. That's exactly
Linus, what did you see at Bomas?
I saw a very well-organized event, and I mean, credit due to Chairman of KANU, Gideon Moi. He put up a very, very good show, colorful. But of course, a lot more diminished for a party that we used to know would fill Kasarani, the gymnasium. And you know, I saw them doing that, what were
those waves. It doesn't come close
like
to
a Mexican wave of sorts.
What used to happen?
Yes. It's really a far cry from the KANU of old. And on the declaration that KANU is back, that's something that we will wait and see. Because there's a sad story about the parties of independence in Africa. The counterparts of KANU include the Malawi Congress Party, which was defeated and it has never been able to come back to power. The United National Independence Party of Zambia, UNIP, the party that the first president, Kenneth Kaunda of Zambia, actually led with, also was there. And so was Uganda's People's Congress, UPC. These were the contemporaries of KANU. And one credit to all those parties, they were deeply ideological in their foundations. And I saw a very good defense of the KANU policies today in a statement made by the Secretary General. I don't know whether we have it, whether we have Nick Salat talking about the sessional paper number 10. We don't have it. But basically, KANU was saying, and rightly so, that not a lot has changed since they first came to the scene and populated the environment with the closest we've ever had to ideological policies. The sessional paper number 10, that basically gave an African socialist approach to the economy. And Nick Salat did speak at length about that. The second significant thing today that I saw there, Joe, was the arrival of Gideon Moi onto the big stage of national politics. Because the simple process of being endorsed as presidential candidate is in itself pushing you to the big league. Because then you will now go into those rooms as whether it's a boardroom for negotiation or you're going there as presidential candidate of KANU party. And so Gideon Moi now moved today from chairman to presidential candidate, which is quite a significant move for him. And finally, what was significant there too was, I know Gideon Moi said KANU is back, but so did everybody else who had left KANU, including the Secretary General,
right.
Former Secretary General of KANU, Raila Odinga was there.
Former Vice Chairman.
So he was right. KANU was back.
Yeah, KANU was
on
back.
that stage.
KANU was back.
Right.
And there's something there that we can also decipher, and that is there are some plans probably afoot going forward. Because, and this is the same leaders that we saw meeting President Kenyatta in State House Mombasa the other day. They seem to move together. So today they were in Gideon Moi's endorsement, and we shouldn't be surprised to see them at Kalonzo Musyoka's endorsement by Wiper, and then at Raila Odinga's endorsement by ODM. And hopefully Moses Wetangula's endorsement by
Ford Kenya.
By Ford Kenya. We've not seen Moses Wetangula for
a bit now. He wasn't there in today's functions.
He wasn't there in today's functions. We have not seen him doing presidential campaigns. But basically, this is a team that has been holding together. And it's not really a very deep hint to suggest that this is a coalition
in the making.
Yeah.
And all those leaders that we saw today in 2022 will be on the same side.
And Raila Odinga picked on something that would be easily thrown at them, which is this whole thing of dynasty. And he went to great lengths to just demonstrate that this shouldn't actually be an issue. And I think we have that sound bite.
We do.
Simama imara. Wewe ni wewe. Mtu asiwaambia wewe ati wewe ni dynasty. Mzee Moi alitoka kule kienda huko juu Sacho, ufukara kubwa. Kama Jaramogi alitoka kwa ufukara, akafanya kazi kwa bidii mpaka akawa makamu wa rais wa taifa letu. Mzee Kenyatta alikuwa anasoma hii mita ya maji hapa, mita reader hapa katika town. Dynasty ni ile utawala ya kifalme, ambaye mtu akikufa mtoto wake anarithi. Lakini Moi alipata tu kwa sababu ya uwezo wake. Hata Jaramogi, hata Kenyatta, na hata Uhuru, na Gideon, na hata Raila. Kwa hiyo Gideon, nikamwambia wewe simama imara. Tuko pamoja. Ukienda utaenda, utakutana na Msala yuko pale, Kalonzo vile yuko pale, utakutana na wao, na hata huyu yours truly vile wakisema nataka atakuwa kule. Hii ni demokrasia ambaye sisi tunataka kurithisha vizazi ambavyo vinakuja.
Joe, actually, I wanted to say exactly what Linus was saying. You would not be mistaken if you were to say this is a coalition in the making. And it reminded me of the 2002 scenario. Joe and Linus would be better placed to explain that, where each of those guys were saying they want to be president. They want to be president. But eventually, a decision was made. Some didn't like it, but a decision was made anyway. And that's where the Kibaki Tosha thing came from. Obviously, the big headache after the BBI scenario and the unlikelihood of having those positions created by the time we go to the general election, unless the courts decide otherwise, the question of time also very, very handy. But the difficult discussion will then be who becomes what in the event they have a coalition, because you'll only be talking about two positions, the president and the running mate. So you're telling other aspirants who will have been endorsed by their political parties to be their flag bearer in the presidential race, you'll be telling them to step down for what? because they can't all be president, they can't all be running.
They say serikali ni kubwa.
Serikali ni kubwa. So probably you will see movements, you know, across board. Some who may be in this team will probably go it alone to the end for certain reasons. Some will join other camps. Some will decide to hold on. So between now and, let's say, January, February, we have a very interesting kind of a scenario where the real discussions will now come to, in the event that the coalition is being crafted, as clearly looks like it is, who becomes what and why. And whether such an MOU pre-election will be fulfilled and honored post-election, because there's also that challenge.
And I found it interesting that Kanini Kega was there. There's a sense in which he just keeps popping up in all of these meetings. And some people say there's no coincidence about it. There's a particular interest that he comes with.
He was actually the lone member of parliament who started Raila's convoy from Laikipia when they made those 7-8 stops, and by the time it was over, I think there were 8 of them. And he was there at the Mount Kenya luncheon, and he was there today during the KANU meeting. But
he was also there in Naivasha during the Oka
people were trying to craft something there. Yes.
I was listening to Gideon Moi's speech today, and he was talking about corruption, about how much money has been lost, and how they're going to put in efforts to try and deal with corruption and all that. But then now, what those optics and what you were saying, and having all these people, yes, having them all there was okay, good. It was what melancholy ama unataka nini hiyo, kumbusha vitu ya zamani, unakumbuka vile ilikuwaga wakati wa Moi. Nostalgia, thank you. Kizungu ngumu. Nostalgic for some people, hearing the KANU songs, KANU Yajenga Nchi and all that. For those people who remember being in our age, wakati wa KANU, and how strong a party it was, there was all that playing in the background. But what is its place now in this political dispensation that we have with the Jubilees and the ODMs and the Wiper and all that? Things have really, really changed for KANU. And as Lina said, having this launch and for Gideon Moi, he's elevated himself to some extent. Now he can sit at the big table and say, okay, this is what I'm bringing. Because remember what we said about alliances and coalitions? Yeah. What is each person bringing to the table? Unaleta nini?
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, for what it's worth, it's kind of fresh, it's different. So a lot of what we saw here, we would not have seen at those KANU delegates conferences that were held at Kasarani. So you see pyrotechnics. Even look, I don't know if we still have cuts of that so people can see. It's white in the background. I mean, red is their color, but it was just sort of accentuating everything that you're seeing there. It was slick, it was new, it was young, it was fresh, it was different. A very different KANU from the one we saw 20 years ago. You would never have seen scenes like these, in KANU, in that dome, with all of these old people, who are sitting there as the delegates. Even the choice of music, a lot more youthful, just, I guess perhaps trying to talk about that. The last thing I just wanted to talk about, and there's been this call for unity amongst our political leaders, and I think since the handshake, whereby unity has sort of meant, let's come together, particularly as political leaders. But I do think it is important for us, and I think we saw that with the religious leaders as well, who are calling for unity and saying, let's not have a lot of this political discourse. And I think the purpose of a democracy and an election, what is an election? It is a contestation of ideas, of significantly different ideas, political debate, yours versus mine, what is your policy? And this sort of push to have all of the leaders together and unifying is great, but I think sometimes we confuse different political ideas and formations and debate, with violence, I think. And sometimes I wonder, yes, and I sometimes wonder if we're the poorer for it when everybody is together in one bandwagon and sort of singing the same song.
Cabinet reshuffle, a little bit of it. I found it interesting.
It was a little reshuffle anyway.
It was a little reshuffle, but I would think it was also very significant. Significant in the sense that you have now the former energy CS in charge of devolution. I would say a stripped devolution docket, because
without
the ASAL docket taken to public service, and take note of how the public service ministry is growing every day. Quite some functions continue to be taken to Professor Margaret Kobia, and you have left CS Charles Keter with devolution, just devolution. And bearing in mind that the Ministry of Devolution, without those ASAL functions is quite stripped. So I would think it was probably a message, I don't know. Then also the labor ministry. When you take away social protection and all those other things and take them once again to the Ministry of Public Service, you leave the CS in charge of public service, I mean in charge of labor, with very little, I would probably say. So I think those changes are quite significant.
Na pesa inafuata function.
Na pesa inafuata functions. I would also probably ask, maybe the president should have gone the whole hog if there is need to do a bit of it, because quite a number of cabinet secretaries, at least I've spoken to 2, and they keep telling me every time they hear of a possibility of a reshuffle, there's some anxiety of sorts. You'd rather deal with it once and for all, and those who are going go, those who are remaining.
But to what end?
But to what end also, bearing in mind that we have only 10 months to go.
Yeah.
Quite a number of them are also toying around with the idea of going out to vie for various seats. Maybe take advantage of
10 months in the cabinet is quite some time.
It's quite some time.
So it's still.
But they must leave by February 9th.
Those
ones vying.
6 months to the election.
It's still something. Yeah, but the question would be, I mean, if in a cabinet that has divided loyalties, there will be a question whether, because a lot of those functions that have been moved around, there's also quite some money around them. I mean, you think about ASAL, special programs, all of these things, you think about social protection, there's always some loose change there, and I would imagine that you don't leave the loose change floating around with people perhaps whose loyalties you're not too sure about.
And with an election coming.
Exactly.
And Joe, it would worry me if indeed the structure of a ministry is actually changed depending on who is coming in. I think that's bad management. If you are removing roles so that, and I saw some of the print media today suggesting that this reshuffle was about taking away power from William Ruto and CSs that are seen to be allied to him. If this is indeed how the president is doing it, then it's very worrying because, okay, you want to leave a shell. There's something easier that other previous presidents used to do. You fire the persons that you don't need.
And then put someone that you have full confidence in.
And put somebody that you have full confidence in. Because look at what the Ministry of Public Service is sounding like right now. With all this, I listened to...
senior citizens, somewhere in between there,
yes.
Social protection and...
I listened to Kanza and that beat itself just sounded like a paragraph.
Yeah, it sounded like a citation.
It's a citation, yeah, exactly. And it will be very, very unfortunate. But it says something again. I mean, as a news organization, we all know here how many times we've been on standby for some...
Breaking news on a cabinet reshuffle.
No, it's been coming.
One day, this colleague of mine called Francis, put me on the alert when I was in Transmara that look, iko kitu.
Kitu ndio hiyo.
Finally. Kitu ndio hiyo. There is obviously something different that President Uhuru Kenyatta has had to contend with. Probably the constitutional environment, because you don't dismiss and employ the same way presidents used to do. Because, I mean, 1 o'clock used to sort some of these problems that he seems to be having, 1 p.m.
And I'm sure he misses those 1 o'clock news bulletins.
Yes, it was very simple.
On KBC radio, and then it will say, uteuzi huo unaanza kutekelezwa mara moja.
And just for the benefit
part of it was also in Kansas State.
Yeah. Just for the benefit of Jamila and Yvonne, about 1 o'clock, one Adu Awiti.
Yes.
I remember that.
Was in a bus coming from
Karachuonyo.
Heading to Nairobi, and
somewhere in
Nakuru, the announcement comes through and has been appointed to cabinet. And the bus was flagged down. The guy taken to a police station was in full panic.
Yeah.
And a limousine came and completed the rest of the journey for Minister Adu Awiti. That was the power of cabinet.
And there was
ministers. They were ministers, they were not secretaries.
Yes, and there was a PS who was abandoned somewhere by the driver because he had been so mean to the driver. So once the announcement came, then the driver said, "I'm sorry, I have to go to work."
See you later. Not for you.
think it's time to
Wewe upambane na hali yako.
tembea. It's time to take this home, and since I've been away for a bit, we'll start with my memo.